That's the process of learning. Remember, it's only a mistake if you don't learn from it.
Profanity well in your novel, it can actually, if you handle profanity well in your novel, it can actually help your book. But a lot of writers struggle with how to use it, when to use substitutes. So we're gonna look at how 9 mega best-selling authors used profanity in their books in a way that helped out their characters and their story. And the first one we're gonna start with is one cursing technique.
All right, let's see. One cursing technique Stephen King swears by. Funny pun sentence. I was just thinking, what if a vegan was diabetic and they still made insulin from animals? Ooh, Sean, see, now you're thinking deep, brother. Now you're thinking deep. Shit, bro. See? This is why you have discussions about things. Because you'll have that one person that thinks so far outside of the box, it obliterates the entire idea of even considering thinking about it. They can't call themselves a vegan if they wear silk either. I think that shit's a joke, Sean. I appreciate the understanding of wanting to save the animals, but being vegan isn't like, okay, I guess there's two types of vegans, right? There's activist vegans and there's like health vegans, right? We're just talking about the activist vegans because my friend's a health vegan. I mean, she does do it for the animals, but it's also for a health reason, right? It's just that's just the way it is. But like, I think the idea of labeling yourself for something like that, you could just, like, the fact that you need to label yourself something like that and state, oh, I will never do this, I think is absolutely ridiculous. And it's complete show. If you really believe it, don't talk about it, show it. And I'd love to see a vegan that people are like, man, I don't know if that guy's a vegan or not, man. Like, he never eats meat. He doesn't wear these certain... But he never talks about it. And, like, I would take my ego here and I would place myself in this position and say, I think of this as, like, you know, people in, like, the trans community or stuff like that. Where it's like, I'm a cross-dresser, but, like, how often do I mention it? How often does it come up if it's not actually coming up? Like, does it come up randomly in conversation? Generally not. So it's like, is it a part of my personality? Yes. Is it a major part? Not really. It's not sufficient. It's not significant. It's just there. And I think that's the difference between, like, the activist and the actual. And it's like, if you want to be the actual, just be. If you want to be an activist, just talk about it. There's also some Hindus, but that's not really the same kind of bullshit. Yeah, because, like, for religious reasons, like, they don't eat pork, right?
That Stephen King swears by. So in Stephen King's book On Writing, he said that his mother was always very opposed to swearing. She said it was the language of the ignorant. And he says that he mostly agrees with her, but he also says that the key to good dialogue is honesty. And what that honesty means is sometimes characters do swear. But I'd like to point out a very interesting technique that King uses with swearing called inversion, which is where basically you have your heroic character curse semi-frequently, but then your evilest character doesn't use any foul language whatsoever. And for an example of this, look at Annie in Stephen King's book Misery. She is the type of person who will take her favorite writer, imprison them, and then break his feet if you watch the movie, or cut off his feet if you read the book. And yet, even though she's this horrific villain, she says that she hates profanity, and instead she uses these most innocent substitutions like cock-a-doodle brat and fiddly-foof. So this innocent language contrasts so sharp.
Hindu don't eat beef because they think cows are the reincarnation of their ancestors. They'll stop driving for a cow and wait all day for it to move on its own. Hinduism is a beef prohibition, but a lot of them abstain from all animal products. Ah, I see. Yes. I mean, guys, I know no one wants to say it. But I'm sure you could have picked a better animal. Like, the Egyptians worship fucking cats, dude. Cats act like fucking gods. Cows? I mean, cows are cute. I love cows. Cows are great. But, I mean, I'm just thinking, like, if you could pick any animal. I mean, I guess, like, you could think of it as, like an actual bull, right? Like, look at the difference between a cow and a bull, right? But that's, like, to me, that's a wording thing where it's like, if I'm just thinking as an author, right? If I created a religion that used an animal as its main symbol, and let's say the animal was a cow, the animal would actually be a bull, and it would be sacrilege to call it a cow, because that would be demeaning to the god. Because bulls are just so much more badass than just your average cow. But that's just me thinking as an author towards, like, how would you create a religion that people, you know, would actually think. If I was asking for reincarnation as an animal, I'd be a tiger, not a cow. Cows are pretty rad. It's pretty nice having them around as you're wandering the streets. I'd pick some kind of bird prey, like an eagle. Ah, that's a good one, Levi. That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've always lived really in a massive farming community. So, like, animals are huge around here, right? You know, like, I work with people that literally call their animals their kids. And they have, like, 60 or 70 animals, and it's like every single one of them has a name. They call them by name, and, like, they can pick them out by name in like, a crowd. I'm just like... It's like, that's a fucking farmer. I don't like to fly, so yeah, keep me on the ground. A whale would be great, though. Dude, a dolphin. I'd come back as a dolphin and just be the absolute biggest asshole and just, like, bully every other fish. Because dolphins are fucking dicks. They're the dicks of the fucking ocean. The thing about cats is, if you tend to them, you'll get way too many, and you're not allowed to get rid of them. I can't see there being an eagle surplus. That's very true, Levi. But I don't know about a surplus of cats in Egypt. I think that was kind of one of the main things, is because, like, they're pretty rare, aren't they? And they're more like a lynx, or like a mix between, like, a house cat and a lynx. Like you would think of, like, a fuck, the word slipped my mind. The type of dog that, like, Anubis is, like a jackal. It's like a jackal. It's like the jackal version of a cat. That's like an Egyptian cat, and they're usually like the hairless ones. But yes, you'd spend your whole day bouncing around the pufferfish to stay high. No, Sean, I'd die because I'm Icarus. I fly too close to the sun. I'd fucking stab myself trying to get in there and fucking die. That's exactly. You know what? I've probably done that in a past life as a dolphin. I bet you. Because past our future, because time doesn't exist. So, you know, your experience of reincarnate cats in Egypt would have been basically modern domestic cats. There were fewer coat patterns at the time, like tabbies hadn't been invented yet, but they were just short-haired cats. I'm trying to think of, like, you know, in the area, like, usually cats fight, like, are like rodent killers, right? Like, what kind of, like, major rodents thrive in that area, right? I don't know anything about the geography over there, so I don't know. I'd assume like small rabbits or something like that. Like Sphinx cats are much newer breed. Ah, I see.
With her horrifying personality. There's also a little bit of psychology.
That's kind of like, I mean, everyone knows it. Again, word slipped my mind. What's her name? From Harry Potter. Dolores, Umbridge. Umbridge. Tan fur, sleek bodies, larger ears. Several should be pretty close. Gerboas, also birds and insects. I guess birds too, right? Because it's a lot of it's like palm trees and shit there, right? That's what's there, I think. I'm not sure if it's palm trees or something else. I know they're tall trees though. Several. It's a breed. All right, naming conventions, love it.
Here, like maybe she's trying to convince herself that she is a good person by not swearing. So to use this technique in your book, find the absolute worst character and have them not swear at all.
Serval. Serval. Servals are pretty massive. Domestic cats descend from African wildcats, which are just cats. Yeah. See, that's where I get the idea of my dragons. Because they go from, like, colossal, like, multi-city to almost continent-sized down to, like, house-sized. I know the scale is a lot different, but it's the idea of continuous inbreeding caused the species to shrink over time due to loss of genetic material.
And then find your best character and have them swear like a sailor. Now this next technique is super powerful. It is number 2.
That's actually like a good way to contrast between like gluttony and Varius. Like gluttony is the profanity king, whereas Varius is much more like highborn, like court oriented, like polite, but he's very sarcastic.
Interstellar's 1F.
Interstellar's 1 F-bomb is perfect.
Scarcity is golden, especially when it comes to profanity, because sometimes if you avoid dropping any sort of foul language for a long period of time, and then you use a curse word, that curse word lands with like a force of 1,000 tons. So in Interstellar, when Cooper is walking with Dr. Mann, he learns of this horrible betrayal of the entire human race that might honestly destroy the human race. That Dr. Mann has only signaled the Endurance to come there because he wanted himself to be saved. And Cooper responds,
Hey.
Now, what does this teach us? I think it shows us that cursing can be really good for emphasis. If you have the most pivotal point in your novel, sometimes that's the right point to use a curse word because it tells the reader.
That's exactly what I would imagine, like the jackal version of a dog. That's like, or of a cat. Like the jackal, like look at a dog and look at a jackal, like the pointed ears, the pointed snout. Like that's the look I was like trying to describe. Cuz you look at like a jackal. Right? He's got like the pointed ears, the long face, right? It's more narrowed than a like normal wolf or dog. I don't know. That's just where I got. I'd love to see and pet a serval, but they're about the size of a medium breed dog and full of energy. They're the largest domestic cat allowed in the U.S. Egypt is in Africa, even if people keep forgetting it. Yes, it's the very, very top connecting piece of Africa that leads into it is Europe, right? Or is that part of Asia? Because I know they overlap, but I don't know where the boundary is. Oriental breed cats look pretty silly. Whoops. Because it's right here, right? And it's just starting right across the edge of... Is this technically still Europe, or is this the line? Because Russia is usually like the line, right? The orientation's all fucked, though. Like, I fucking hate Google for this stupid shit where it won't just point north, but when you're trying to, like, move it around and shit. I'm like, can I just get this to point north? Reset to north. So much easier. It's Asia. The line is that river what flows through Istanbul. Okay, because I know it's like halfway down, like at the line of Russia or something like that, right? Is like where, or it's like on an angle or something like that, where the plates like overlap, like something like that. That's always what I've thought of, but yeah. So it's like very, very top end here, connecting into the like next part. But yeah, world history, very interesting. It's the Ural Mountains, I think. Okay. Yeah, because I figure it would be a mountain range because it's the plates hitting each other, right? So there'd be some sort of divisible barrier there, and it's not a river. Or I mean, I guess it could be a river, but you generally think plates overlapping each other would create either some sort of one-sided mountain, like kind of odd-looking shaped mountain, or one that's like lower on one side and higher on the other, right? That's just what I imagine thinking about like terrain.
You're like, hey, look, like this is something that's worthy of cursing. I do think there is a danger if swearing is sort of omnipresent throughout your...
It's not defined by plate tectonics. It's the distinction is thousands of years old. Yeah. It's more of a territorial thing, right? Because aren't they pretty much like basically on top of each other? Like there's only the littlest, tiniest piece that comes out at the end near China, right? The rest of it's all Europe, and Europe's on top. At least that's how I remember it.
Entire book, that it loses its power in a way, and the reader becomes really desensitized to it. So I would try to find the most pivotal points in your plot, and then just sprinkle in some profanity there to wake the reader up. Now, the third technique that we're going to look at is probably the most fun out of everything we're talking about in this video. It's number 3, Maze Runner's substitutions. James Dashner is the author of Maze Runner, and he made a very curious choice. Because he was writing for a YA market, he chose not to employ...
It's a line going north to the north of Iran. Ah, okay.
Traditional curse words, but instead he decided to substitute a whole bunch of slang words that he made up. For instance, the boys frequently curse using the word shuck. I'll give you 3 guesses what that is a substitute for. He also has this other one where the boys say clunk.
I clunked my pants 3 times.
Which is a substitute for, well, poop would be the G-rated version. So what does this strategy get you? Well, 1, it gets you realism without the vulgarity. 2, it's actually really good for world building. If you are creating a universe in a sci-fi land or fantasy land or something like that, it helps readers to feel like, oh, like there's even...
That's kind of what I wanted to do with like Cryogen, where I was like Gerbus. It's like the language has evolved over time where it's like, Jesus is Gerbus. Which is like a play on like close to but not quite Jeebus, right? From The Simpsons. Save me, Jeebus! Jeebus, save me!
Even their own language here. And 3,
and that's kind of what I want to do, is I want to make up my own swear words, right? My own profanity, and it'll be interchangeable between characters based upon how they interact, right? And they'll only be seen in a third party through Husai's eyes. And the other substitutes will be there. Good morning, Eddie in the mix, level 2, buddy! Congratulations on leveling up. Felger Carb, from original Battlestar Galactica, which Starbuck used to refer to technical stuff they didn't really need. Ah, true, Sean. Battlestar Galactica has some good stuff. It's still, Frack is still pretty relevant. But yeah, creating like a set of like ideas and oh shit, JR12654, thank you for the follow. How are you? Welcome to the stream.
Hi, sweetie.
We need a toke for that. Yeah, because they need to proxy to swear without actually swearing.
I'm not that interested.
Someone accidentally set the magical auto-translate parental mode.
Why are you smoking?
Maybe.
What? When did you start smoking?
Pretty tired, how about you? Just chilling, good sir. We're reacting to Profanity and how to make profanity work in your book or in your writing in general. And I subscribe to pretty much Quentin Tarantino's way of saying it, which is whenever the fuck you can, just fucking because. Just
Ethnic slur
fucking
tier
slay.
list.
Ethnic slur tier list. True. Oh my god. Well, obviously, because not okay. So there's the octopi, right? Wait, no, someone already got in trouble for that one. No, because there's the octopi, right? And there's 3 versions of the octopi, and the monarch is yellow or is Whitehorn. The monarch and the viceroy are Whitehorn, and 90% of the time, Whitehorns are chosen as the concubines, even though it doesn't have to be a Whitehorn. And this causes like friction between the blacktails, the Whitehorns, and the yellowbacks and the Whitehorns. So there is literally like ethnic slurs within like those communities of the octopi of what they call the Whitehorns. And my working title for it is to call them horny.
Referring to my octopi friend as my squigga.
My squigga. Dude, that goes so hard! That goes so hard, Levi! Can I steal that? Can I steal that? That goes so fucking hard. My squigga! You know, but you can't prove. It's perfect plausible deniability. I love it. Hell yeah, thank you, Levi. That is beautiful. Oh my god. I have to use it at least once. Yeah, not saying that first one. I was like, wait, that is way too close, bro. That is way too close. I'll say Fashiga Masquiga. Okay? Fashiga Masquiga. I think that one works better. It's not so fucking close. That's just like you could slur into the next word using that slur. So you need something like hard heads for like the insectoids, and something like for like flying for the avians. Sean, that just makes me think of one thing. Snoo snoo. Death by snoo snoo. Oh, the mind is willing, but the body is flabby and bruised.
also think it's really fun to be original and to coin some words because it sets your book apart. It makes it feel different than all the other books. Now, you can also use this strategy if you're writing to a particular conservative audience or religious audience or simply young audience. And honestly, it's really fun to come up with substitutions for swear words as well. Just write down a list of common ones and then what your substitution is. And in my dialogue course, I have a whole video on swearing.
The Hull Hopper saying faux snoo to call her services. Dude, that's a good one, Sean. I actually like that one too. Can I steal that one? Because at some point in time, we got to go back to cryogen. Duh. I have to ask, man. I have to ask. I don't want to just, you know, rip your shit off. I want to at least try to ask before I do. Even if you say, I mean, what?
But I also have 28 other videos walking you through the steps of how to become a better dialogue writer. I go over stuff like the 12 ways to make each character sound different in your book. I go over the 4 pillars of dialogue writing, which are evade, fight, conceal, and contrast. I also go over a lot of common mistakes that writers make when writing dialogue and give you lots of examples to show you, all right, here's what the most amazing dialogue can actually do. So if you've been a regular viewer of this channel and you're like, I want to take my writing to the next level, then I would recommend either buying that course or subscribing to BookFox Academy, which gives you access to all of my courses. Now it's time for point number 4, which is honestly one of the grittier points in this whole video. This is J.D. Salinger's $1 Million Raw Honesty. I know you guys know Salinger's Catcher in the Rye, and Holden Caulfield in that book does not hold back on the language. He is very unfiltered in the way he swears in that book. But it does give you a sense that this character is trying to be honest. They are not like holding back in any way. Maybe through cursing, he's trying not to be a phony. Little sidebar information here. This was actually the very first novel in the US that contained the words F you. Although no character said it, it was just on a wall like graffiti. There, now you feel a little smarter. My overall sense of the way that swearing works in this book is that it is the opposite of gratuitous. Gratuitous profanity doesn't add anything to a book. It doesn't build character. It does nothing other than really shock the reader. But in the case of Catcher in the Rye, I really think if you stripped all the profanity out of the book, it would not be the same book. It wouldn't ring as true, and we wouldn't get as good of a sense of Holden's character as we do. And Tony Robbins has actually talked about this. He constantly curses in his seminars, and he does it for a very specific reason. He says that the brain responds to curse words in a way that it responds to almost no other type of language. And I think Salinger was tapping into that when he chose to use so much.
You know what swear words are? I think they're like tongues for emotion. Like the intent and the feeling behind swearing is like tongues for emotion. And then eventually one of those words picks up and becomes the norm for that expression. But I think all swearing in and of itself, the ideas behind the words are fueled by emotion, not logic. I always say there's no such thing as a bad word, only a bad use and bad timing. It's just a cultural thing, right, Sean? So it's like, how is it culturally ingrained into your society? We literally call them curse words, as if saying them either curses you or curses the person that you're saying them towards. As if, like, they're magic or something. Or you do, like, the South Park thing, where when you say 1,000 curse words, it, like, unlocks... I don't exactly remember how the fucking episode goes, but if you've seen the South Park episode, then you know. And if you haven't, go watch it. It's fucking awesome. Just, I don't remember, just put in, like, the swearing, like, 1,000 curse words, South Park episode. fucking amazing.
Profanity in his book. So what I want you to do is take a good hard look at your novel right now and maybe catalog how often do you swear, what swear words do you use, and then ask yourself, how would the book feel differently if I cut these out?
Yeah, I'm not going to use foul language in front of my grandparents because it would create distress with them. But my homies, yeah, true, Sean, exactly. I'm not going to swear at work, but I'm going to swear on my fucking stream. You're goddamn right, motherfucker.
Because if you can cut them out, you probably should, right? If there's no reason to keep them in, then yeah, cut them. But if you feel like they give a texture to the book, if they are doing world building, if they are building your character, then there's a reason for them to be in there and you should absolutely keep them in.
True.
This next point is kind of a covert operation, and it is number 5, Marquez's sneaky workaround. What do you do in your book if you feel like it's not right to have the actual curse word spoken? Maybe there's been too much cursing already in your book and you're like, I don't want to add more to that. Maybe there's been no cursing, but you're like, I don't feel this is the type of book that cursing would improve because of my audience or for some other reason. If that is you, then follow Gabriel Garcia Marquez's strategy in Love in the Time of Cholera. When there was nothing left to eat on the plates, the captain wiped his lips with a corner of the tablecloth and broke into indecent slang. What's he doing? He's just summarizing the curse rather than saying it in actual dialogue. And I see this technique used pretty often in books aimed at conservative or religious or young audiences. It gets you the realism, like you're saying, like, this is the type of character who would say something.
That the perfect example of for me of that is like A Christmas Story when Ralphie throws the bolts everywhere and says fuck. But it's like the narrator's like, no, it wasn't that. He does the whole spew of like how bad the word is, right? And it's just like, oh my god, it makes it so much more powerful, even though you're using the substitute for it, right? Especially in that context. Like if Zayd was to swear. Like if there was to be a moment for Zayd to swear, it would be when the monarch's approaching him. And he's taking everyone down, and he's just like, I fucking knew something was wrong. And then he just dies. Oh god, I think that would go so hard. Sandy's like, I knew something was fucking wrong. Because during the play, it's going to be like the whole dialogue, like theatrical side of it, right? Where you're like, hey, this is obviously embellished of what happened, but it gives you the same idea, right? Oh, fudge! Except I didn't say fudge. I said the actual word. Exactly. That's what it is, Sean. Yeah. Such a good time.
Like this, but without the offensive profanity. And you don't have to do this everywhere in the book. You could curse in some parts of the book and then other parts just summarize it. This next one is my favorite point out of all 9 of these techniques.
A good time to actually do that would be like when we're dealing with people that are oh dude, that's such a good idea. Save like a specific type of profanity for the Warriors of Light, and their profanity matches the profanity that like ex-adventurers and people that have stolen or have had their licenses taken away and become like part of the black market, basically like pirates and bandits and shit. And then have those characters like have some sort of excuse for the reason why they use that language. Or have it in like a Freudian slip. Or a Pavlovian response. Or something like that, with like, okay, no one heard that? Okay, good. Husai's sitting over here like, huh, that's interesting. Would you look at that? Okay. I will keep note of that. Is it like, alright, I knew something was wrong with you guys from the beginning, but I got no idea. The stupid leg lamp. The leg lamp is the fucking best. I want a bowling alley! I want a bowling alley! They're sending you a bowling alley? No, it's probably just the deed to the bowling alley. You know how this thing works. The pride! The total pride of it is just so fucking great. Oh my god.
It is number 6, Flannery's Holy Potty Mouths. Now, Flannery O'Connor was a Catholic writer. I think there's a case made that she is easily in, say, the top 5 best short story writers of the 20th century.
Oh,
and there's not
really?
a ton of cursing in her short stories, but something I did see semi-frequently is that she would have characters
That's the first time I heard someone mention short stories. So what's her name?
mouths. Now, Flannery O'Connor
All right. So this is an author we actually have to write down because I'm gonna look this shit up. I have a folder for this, don't I? Not a folder, but I do have a file somewhere. Here, books to read. That's what it is. Authors to research. Flannery O'Connor. Short stories. Hey, if we're, following the footsteps of the greats, guys, right? Let's do a comparison. That's a name we can compare our stories to when we're doing a, whatchamacallit? Like a grok analysis. To give a closer analysis based on someone who actually does short stories as opposed to an actual, full author like King or George R.R. Martin or, any of those greats.
O'Connor was a Catholic writer. I think there's a case made that she is easily in, say, the top 5 best short story writers of the 20th century. And there's not a ton of cursing in her short stories, but something I did see semi-frequently is that she would have characters use religious curses, like Jesus Christ. And she does this in multiple stories, but especially in things like Parker's Back. But she's Catholic, and I feel like there's a resistance to her using these religious curses. And so what she does is she gives them a double meaning. On one level, her character is just cursing. Like, they think they are uttering a religious curse. But on the other hand, the curse happens at a very pivotal, almost religious transformation moment, a conversion moment, and so it sounds like they're calling upon God. So Flannery manages to be both true to the actual character, this is something they would say, and also true to her personal religious convictions. Now, how does this apply to you? Well, I would say look in your book for places where curses can have double meanings. And it might just be something silly, like a character walks into a room and finds his wife with a coworker and they're doing what you would expect on a bed, and drops an F-bomb. Obviously, that's both cursing, and it's also a literal description of what's happening. Now, the next one is a little bit of an exception to everything we've talked about so far. It is number 7, curse words as humor. You know
Yes.
that sometimes curse words are just hilarious. In fact, you might be thinking right now of a place in a movie or a book or something where curse words were used in a funny way rather than in, say, an angry way. Let's look at a book by Jenny Fagan called The Panopticon. I think the reason that is funny is the little girl keeps on asking this woman, oh, did you say this curse word? Did you say this curse word? And then she comes up with quite crazy examples of curse words that end up being more funny than offensive in any way. So listen, I don't care how depressing your book is, how dark it is, there's always room for humor. So look for a place
look
where
at Expedition
you can
33,
use
man. It
curse
does it
words
so
in a
fucking
hilarious
well.
way. I guarantee that you won't regret it, and your reader won't regret it either. This next example is probably our grittiest one out of this entire video. It's number 8, Irving Welch's Class Consciousness. You probably know Irving Welch because he wrote Trainspotting, which is about heroin addicts in Scotland. Now, the sheer number of F-bombs and C-words in this book is
sad stories often don't work without humor. Yeah, because it needs the contrast. Because without the contrast, you can't set, you can't foundationalize that, low end, right? Like where the equalizer is essentially. So you need those bumps to throw things out of proportion. And then it truly makes people fall when everything falls apart.
Actually, it's staggering. There's more than 700 F-bombs and more than 300 C words in this book. With those kind of numbers, he better have a very good reason for doing what he's doing, but I think he actually does. So I think cursing, and specifically the way that his characters are cursing, is a way for him to give his characters a social class, to let the reader know this is the social class they belong to. They're working class, they're from Edinburgh, and also their excessive language matches their excessive actions. The wild things they will do in order to get their hands on heroin is, I mean, like diving into a public toilet type of bad stuff. I think if you removed the curse words from a book like this, it would be a betrayal of the texture of these characters' real lives. Now, you might be saying,
Yeah, I'd say something like that with, like, how class kind of works in the tree, but it's more of, like, class is almost based on IQ because certain jobs take a certain level of intelligence in order to do, right? Like, procuring the, like, tree material itself, right? And, like, going through the process of, like, manufacturing it. Something like that is, like, having that kind of knowledge isn't something that, you know, your normal low-end adventurer almost. Because there'll be, like, a clash from inside the tree versus the Adventurers Guild. But inside the tree, it'll be, like, you know, your, like, low-end class merchants versus your, like, extravagant kind of merchants. So, like, people with, like, food trucks versus people with restaurants. Your people with food trucks are going to be more on the lower end with the higher, probably profanity rate because they're less intelligent, less educated, and that would be wisdom, not IQ or knowledge. IQ is how easy it is for you to learn. Wisdom is how well you use it, and knowledge is how much you know. But yes, but your IQ limits you from how much you can learn, Sean. If you can't learn the magic that it takes in order to peel pieces of the tree off and then shred it, how are you going to do that job? But it's really easy to learn how to stand behind a stall, and if people come to you, you exchange money. You see what I mean? Like, that's where the IQ limit is going to be. Because if that guy didn't want to stand behind a stall, he could go do, like, the manufacturing and stuff like that. Even a mid to low IQ can eventually learn how to do something. Yeah, but we're talking, like, magic, Sean. So you would have to learn how to specifically use the types of magic in a certain way in order to procure the pieces. So you have to be somewhat proficient with magic, which requires an understanding of reality on a level of, like, precision and geometry, right? If you can't do, like, structural engineering geometry, you probably can't do the magic required to procure pieces of the tree. But, I mean, you could be a low-end adventurer, no fucking problem. You could probably even be a high-end adventurer. Like, look at Reek. He's like that, you know, shoot first, ask questions later. Memory and wisdom, even if it takes 10 years to learn a spell, high IQ makes it easier to learn, even if you can't actually use it due to a lack of wisdom. Well, it's just how magic works, Sean, and magic works through understanding and consciousness. So, like, if you couldn't understand, like, how to, like, an angle works on a geometric shape, like a polygon or like a pentagon, not something that's like, well, I guess a polygon because it has different angled shapes, right? So, you know, we got like a piece of a triangle here, a piece of a circle here, and a piece of that there, because we're like manufacturing a piece to build something, right? Like basically like a human 3D printer. That's the idea behind it. And the people that do it are just so specific in that one grouping of how they use the magic. It's like it's like second nature to them. So they themselves basically become the what we would use a technological machine for. And the better they are, like, the more efficient that machine is. And that's kind of the comparison that I'm trying to use there. But yeah, not basically understanding algebra and math, you wouldn't be able to do the magic required to do that. Because you would just, like, fuck things up. Yeah, I'm being pedantic here. Sounds like you need high, mid, to ultra hit across the 3 stats to do that work. Super brain mode. Yeah, it's the most, like, secure and privileged thing to do in the tree is to gather the material. And, like, procure it. And people are like, that's why a lot of people do crafting, because it's like they like the idea of it, but they can't work with the material itself of the tree because it's too hard to handle. So they use the craft or materials that adventurers bring in from outside of the tree, such as hides, like ores, plant matter, like other kinds of trees and bark and stuff like that. And, you know, that they can make wooden things out of. And it's like that's where there becomes like an entire industry that's set aside from just the base low end. And this is the contrast that I want to show between the idea of like what is UBI and what is the scale that you can elevate above UBI once you've like decided that you just don't want to be a useless part of society. But anyways, we finally got to add some world building into these, even though these aren't technically about editing. Dialogue is still a big part that I'm needing to work with.
Saying to yourself, like, I don't want to do that in my book, like that's not really my style. That's cool. Here's a technique that I want you to consider. Have one character who curses a lot and one character who doesn't curse at all. I think that contrast will give us a sense of their personalities and help the reader to feel like they know these people. Now it's time for our very last point, number 9, the character reversal. I swear that I have seen examples of this in both books and movies, but for the life of me, when researching this video, I couldn't find those examples. So you're gonna have to do me a solid and in the comments, drop any examples you have of this. And you can do this one of 2 ways. One, you have a character who swears all the time, but in a crazy moment of crisis, they don't swear at all. Or you could have a character who never swears and is the type of person who would never swear, but then in a moment of crisis, what comes out of their mouth is filthy. So even though I don't have a book example, I actually have a personal example for this one. My mother was a saint. Like, never swore at all, never heard anything coming out of her mouth that was even remotely like a curse word. She considered like the word butt to refer to your hindquarters was a filthy word you should never use. But once, when she was disciplining me, she told me to get my ass back to my bedroom. And I was just floored. I was shocked. I'm like, So, you know, when you have a character who that's not in their personality to curse or swear at all, and then you have them do it, it's so powerful for the reader to experience. And I would recommend using that technique. And just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to BookFox Academy or buy a copy of that dialogue course. It will help you immensely.